That night, during a video call, the camera inadvertently swept past the hotel curtains. Through a narrow gap, two figures were locked in a tight embrace. When reappeared on screen, his hair was slightly disheveled, and a lipstick stain that wasn't mine marked the corner of his mouth. "Just went to the bathroom," he said. "I didn't cry or make a scene. I simply hung up the phone silently, then dialed the hotel's front desk, obtaining security footage, saving the recordings, checking records, compiling evidence. Step by step, I transformed shattered trust into clear terms in a divorce settlement. This wasn't a story about forgiveness. It was a realistic account of a woman, after her world of lies completely collapsed, taking back everything, one step at a time. The night had deepened in the bedroom. Only the soft glow of the desk lamp spread across the table, and the documents beside my laptop remained unread. Yet, my eyes repeatedly drifted to my phone screen. On the video call interface, Michael, wearing a casual t-shirt, leaned by the hotel bed, smiling gently. "Honey, I'll be back in 2 days." He held a water glass, his tone relaxed, his eyes seeming to flicker slightly. I tried to smile too, my voice soft. "Okay, you should get some rest. You have a meeting tomorrow." We had been in a long-distance relationship for almost a month. He was out of town for a business deal, and every night he would video call me to let me know he was safe. But tonight, for some reason, an unidentifiable anxiety welled up inside me. The moment he lowered his head to set down the glass, the picture suddenly shook. The camera didn't adjust in time. Instead, it swept towards the hotel's floor-to-ceiling window. My breath caught. Under the dim, yellow light, shadows seeped through the curtain gap to bodies intertwined, their movements intimate and fervent. The unrestrained gasps and murmurs cut through the night silence like sharp knives, stabbing directly into my eardrums. Blood pounded in my ears. I stared intently at the screen, my fingers beginning to tremble, almost pressing the disconnect button. But the next second, Michael's figure reappeared in the frame. His hair was a bit messy, and the corners of his mouth turned up slightly, as if nothing had happened. "Just went to the bathroom." He said it casually, even raising a hand to rub his neck. But I saw it clearly. The edge of his lip was smudged with a vivid red that wasn't mine. Under the light, that lipstick stain was particularly glaring, as if mocking my naivete. My heart felt as if someone had brutally squeezed it, suffocating, cold, yet scalding hot. Anger surged like lava, and I instinctively clutched the wedding ring box beside me, my fingernails digging deep into my palm. The pain almost made me cry out. "What's wrong? You look awful." He raised an eyebrow, feigning concern. I opened my mouth, but my throat felt constricted, unable to utter a word in that moment. Only a roaring filled my mind. Countless past images flashed back. The vows at our wedding, the firm grip of his hand, the jacket he draped over me late at night, and before his business trip, his gentle expression when he said, "When I get back, let's have a baby." It was all a lie. My stomach felt like it had been filled with ice water, churning and nauseous. "Nothing. I'm just a little tired." I forced down my trembling, pulled out a smile, and quickly ended the call. The instant the screen went black, I could no longer control myself. Tears splattered onto the desktop, creating a messy splash. The night breeze blew in through the half-open window, disheveling my hair and making me shiver. The wedding ring box in my hand felt hot from my grip. My fingernails dug into my palm, even drawing a faint line of blood. Why did he lie to me? Why did he make me wait like an idiot for his so-called business trip? I stared at the ring, a desolate ache slowly rising in my heart. It wasn't just a mark, but a reminder that the person I relied on was betraying me in the cruelest way possible. My phone screen suddenly vibrated, and a message popped up. "Honey, go to bed early. Don't miss me." I stared at the words, the furious rage churning in my chest, threatening to consume me. His smiles, his thoughtfulness, his tenderness, all mere pretense. He had just been intimate with someone else, yet he dared to say these things to me. I violently threw my phone onto the bed, as if only that could temporarily rid me of the sickening feeling of suffocation. The room was eerily silent, save for the rhythmic thumping of my heart against my eardrums. Suddenly, a cold voice spoke within me. "End it. Not the call, but this marriage." I looked up at the mirror. The woman reflected there had red-rimmed eyes and a haggard expression. Yet amidst her trembling, an unprecedented determination faintly shone through. The wedding ring box snapped shut, and I placed it in the deepest part of the drawer. In that moment, I understood he could pretend nothing happened. But my eyes and my heart would no longer deceive themselves. The night was deep, but I was terrifyingly awake. I had to redefine my future, because I could never again spend my life with a man who professed love to me on camera, only to kiss someone else off camera. I spent a sleepless night. My mind was like a relentless drum, booming. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the shadows and heard the gasps from the video call. That scene was like a poison, invading my blood, corroding my bones. The next day, I applied light makeup, deliberately concealing my exhaustion. My fingertips were icy, yet I steadily dialed the hotel's front desk. "Hello, please connect me to the security room." My tone was calm, almost devoid of emotion. After a few seconds of hesitation on the other end, someone directed me to a room at the end of the hallway. In the security room, the air was thick with the smell of smoke and burnt electronics. A few security guards were on duty. They looked surprised when I entered, then quickly masked it. "Mum, what can we help you with?" one of them asked, his voice stiff. I pressed my lips together, speaking calmly. "Last night, my husband stayed at the hotel. I'm concerned for his safety and want to check on him." Safety? The guards exchanged a glance, their expressions subtle, as if they already knew something. My heart tightened, but my grip on my fingers grew firmer. "Please pull up the hallway surveillance footage from PM to midnight last night." The screen flickered a few times, then the footage played smoothly. The hallway lights were silent until 11:07 p.m. At that moment, my breath caught in my throat. Michael, wearing a shirt I knew all too well, strolled casually to a room door. He looked back, as if confirming something, then bent down to open the door. Immediately after, a woman walked quickly towards him. Skylar, in the footage. She wore a beige trench coat, her long hair falling over her shoulders, her eyes burning with desire. She practically leaped onto her tiptoes, kissing Michael on the corner of his mouth, and he didn't push her away. I was already a joke, a pathetic woman betrayed by her husband, yet trying to pretend everything was fine by checking on his safety. Humiliation surged over me like a tide, making my cheeks burn red and my eyes sting. But I didn't cry. I stared at the screen until the image froze on the intimate closeness of Michael and Skylar. The raging fury in my chest almost ripped me apart right there. But reason brutally pulled me back. Crying was the most useless form of resistance. I took a deep breath, turned to the guard, and said in a chilling voice, "Please make a copy of all the footage from last night." The guard hesitated, then spoke tentatively. "Mum, these recordings involve guest privacy. We usually don't release them. I am his legal wife," I said, looking him directly in the eye. "This concerns my rights, and I have the right to preserve evidence." My gaze was unwavering, my tone as firm as if giving an order. The guards exchanged glances for a moment, then finally relented, one saying in a low voice, "All right, I'll make a copy for you." As the hard drive whirred to life with a click-clack, I felt blood flowing through my veins again. This was the first step, not for forgiveness, not for confrontation, but to reclaim my power in this marriage. As the footage was copied frame by frame onto the USB drive, I watched my reflection on the security monitor. My face was still pale, but a sharp edge was slowly emerging within the calm. When the guard handed me the USB drive, his eyes held a hint of complexity. He seemed to want to say something, but ultimately only uttered, "I'm sorry, Mum." I took the USB drive, a cold smile playing on my lips. No need to apologize for someone else. Walking out of the security room, the sunlight stung my eyes. I looked up and took a deep breath. Rage still churned in my chest, but the feeling of humiliation had been replaced by another kind of power, the power of control. "Michael, did you think I would forever drown in your lies? You were wrong. The moment you betrayed me, I was no longer that compliant wife, and this USB drive would become the sharpest knife in my hand." The night was deep, and the room was so quiet that even the ticking of the clock was exceptionally clear. The bright glow of my phone screen stung my eyes, yet I kept scrolling down to refresh. As if pulled by an invisible force, Skylar, her social media had just updated with a new post. The caption was simple, yet exceptionally glaring. "The best love is witnessed by fireworks." In the photo, they stood side by side, with fireworks blossoming across the sky behind them. Michael's hand rested naturally on her shoulder, his gaze tender, as if protecting the most precious treasure in the world. My breath suddenly caught. Scrolling further, there was a picture of a Ferris wheel, at its peak under the night sky. Skylar laughed, looking up, while he leaned down and kissed her lips. The scene was beautiful, like a still from a romance drama. My fingertips were icy, but my heart felt scorched by fire. I kept scrolling, photo after photo. They were wearing matching outfits, that blue and white plaid shirt, which I had carefully chosen and given to Michael last year. That day, he had smiled and said, "Matching outfits are childish, but if you picked it out, I'll wear it." Now, he wore it, standing beside another woman, his smile unrestrained. It felt like one slap after another across my face. I suddenly understood that all those memories I had carefully cherished, the first time seeing fireworks, the first time riding a Ferris wheel, the first time holding hands in matching outfits, could all be copied, pasted, and given to someone else by him, for him. Those moments were never unique. Tears blurred my vision, and the photos on the screen merged into a single, blinding block of color. I was practically suffocating. Why? My voice caught in my throat, as if torn on the nightstand. Our wedding photo stood silently in the picture. We smiled brightly, as if truly believing in forever. But now, it had become the greatest irony. I abruptly stood up, snatched the picture frame from the cabinet, and violently smashed it onto the floor. Crash, glass shards shattered, scattering countless tiny points of light. Like spilled lies, I reached out with my bare hand to pick them up. A sharp fragment sliced my fingertip, and a searing pain instantly shot through me. Drops of bright red blood slowly fell, staining the words at the bottom of the picture frame forever. The dazzling red soaked into the white background, like a stamp of irony. I stared at those words, my heart feeling as if it had been cruelly torn open. So-called forever, it turned out, was nothing more than the cheapest lie. I once believed that love was my worth, that as long as I gave my whole heart, I would be cherished and protected. But reality told me, in his world, I could be replaced at any time, even ridiculed. My fingers trembled uncontrollably, blood sliding down the back of my hand, splattering onto the floor like silent mockery. The anger and humiliation intertwined in my heart, forming a vortex that dragged me into a dark abyss. What was I really? His gentle wife? Or a joke in the eyes of others on social media? In the mirror, I saw a woman with a pale face and empty eyes. She was desperate, fragile, like someone abandoned by the world. In that moment, I suddenly felt as if I had been pushed from a tall building, constantly falling through the air, surrounded by cold wind and suffocation. But just as I was about to completely shatter, my hand firmly grasped a sharp piece of glass. The stinging pain in my palm jolted me awake. Yes, my world was collapsing, but I couldn't keep falling. I had to grab onto something, to steady myself. Even if it was a wound, even if it was pain, I slowly raised my head, staring at my bleeding finger. And a low voice emerged from my throat. Enough. Tears still flowed, but a corner of my heart seemed to be quietly solidifying into hard ice. They could flaunt, mock, and copy my memories, but my worth would not forever be tied to a cheating man. I knew this was just the beginning. Anger would be my fire, my wounds would be my armor, and those drops of blood would be the testament to my awakening. I took off my wedding ring. The ring that once held countless dreams and promises had now become a symbol of mockery. I walked to the window and threw it forcefully into the distance, as if discarding all my illusions and dependencies. In that moment, I understood that some things, once lost, could never be found again. The warm yellow lights of the coffee shop reflected on the table, creating a faint mist. The late-night streets were silent, save for the occasional passing vehicle. Like distant whispers, Chloe and I sat opposite each other. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her phone clutched in her hand, her knuckles white from the tight grip. "Grace, don't just take this." She slammed her hand on the table, her voice trembling but firm. "I'm going to find Michael right now and ask him if he has any shame." The liquid in the coffee cup rippled softly from the impact. I stared blankly at the ripples. I continued, my tone slow and calm. "The old me always saw marriage as a haven, and him as my sole support, but now I understand the deeper you rely, the harder you fall. I can no longer be a clinging vine, swaying in the wind, waiting for someone else to give me sunshine." I gazed out at the night, a strange yet resolute strength surging in my chest. "I want to be a mighty oak," I said softly. "Even standing alone, I can stand tall through storms and bloom with my own flowers." Chloe paused for a few seconds, then suddenly laughed, tears mingling with her smile. "Grace, this is the real you." She reached out and tightly squeezed my hand. "Okay. Then we'll figure out a way together to help you become the strongest mighty oak." The atmosphere in the coffee shop suddenly shifted. On the table, scattered tissues and unfinished coffee became witnesses to our secret meeting. We began to formulate an awakening plan through the night. Step 1. Collect evidence. His affair with Skylar can't just rely on what you saw. We need more evidence that will stand up in court, Chloe said, taking out a notebook and diligently writing. Security footage, chat logs, credit card statements. These are all weapons. I nodded, my eyes hardening. I want to leave him no escape. Step 2. Organize assets. How much do you know about his financial situation? I thought for a moment, then slowly spoke. A portion of the company's shares are in his name. The house was bought after we married and the mortgage is still ongoing. I also have some passwords for his investment and wealth management accounts. Chloe's eyes lit up. Excellent. All of this can prove your rightful share. I added in a low voice. I won't let him use assets to suppress me anymore. Every single cent, I will protect. Step 3. Career path planning. After a moment of silence, I looked up at her. Chloe, I need to rethink my career. I once gave up promotion opportunities and didn't take on collaboration projects offered by the law firm because I was accommodating him. But now, I won't back down anymore. Chloe nodded without hesitation. You absolutely have the capability. Grace, you're the smartest, most perceptive woman I know. You shouldn't be trapped in the cage of domestic life. Her words were like a flame, illuminating the dark corners of my heart. We talked more and more deeply, and the plan in the laptop gradually took shape. The words weren't flowery, but they held the blueprint for my future. The night was late, and most of the coffee shop customers had left. Only we remained in a corner, writing furiously. The waiter cast a few curious glances but didn't disturb us. I suddenly felt that this night carried a sense of ritual. It wasn't about desperate tears, but a trumpet call for new beginnings. When the pen point put down the last period, Chloe and I looked at each other. We both smiled, that smile no longer fragile, but with a certain cold determination. I knew clearly in my heart this step was my turning point. From now on, I would no longer be Michael's shadow. I was Grace, a woman capable of creating her own world. In the early morning, the lobby of the office building was as bustling as ever, teeming with people. I walked in high heels, my steps steadier than ever before. This was my first week back at work. The old me always prioritized family and marriage. Work was secondary, a responsibility that took a back seat. As long as Michael said, "Don't work too hard," I would willingly give up promotion opportunities, turn down important cases, and tell myself, it's not too late to pursue my dreams after his career stabilizes. But now, I no longer needed to wait in the office. Files for a multinational project that had been accumulating for nearly half a year lay quietly on the conference table. It was a complex case involving multiple parties, and the previous manager had already left, with no one daring to easily take it on. Grace, are you sure you want to take this? Kevin, a colleague from my department, asked tentatively, his voice tinged with concern. I looked up, my gaze resolute. Of course, no one is better suited than I am. What surged within me wasn't the old anxiety of pleasing others or proving myself, but a clear sense of conviction. At the project kickoff meeting, the representatives from the international partner immediately presented harsh conditions. Contract terms needed revision, the budget had to be increased, and they even questioned our team's execution capabilities. The atmosphere became strained as everyone exchanged uneasy glances. I opened my laptop and spoke calmly. Your proposed budget increase lacks data support. Our market research shows that if implemented according to your plan, it will lead to an overall profit decrease of 15%. However, if we adopt the alternative solution I've provided, we can reduce losses to under 5% while maximizing the potential benefits for both parties. Silence fell briefly in the conference room after I finished speaking. The international representatives exchanged a look, clearly taken aback by my professionalism. Richard, the director, cleared his throat and gave me a meaningful glance, a look that, for the first time, held recognition and admiration. Over the next few weeks, I poured almost all my energy into the project. During the day, I efficiently managed the team. At night, I reviewed contracts line by line. When tired, I would nap on the couch in the office. When hungry, I would order the simplest takeout. What was strange was that the work that used to feel overwhelming now came effortlessly. I finally understood. My past inefficiency wasn't due to a lack of ability, but because my focus had been drained by a dysfunctional marriage. When I stopped being distracted by Michael's betrayal, no longer sacrificing myself for the role of wife, I unleashed my purest strength. Gradually, my colleagues began to look at me differently. Grace, you've really changed recently, Kevin remarked. It's like you're a completely different person. Yeah, her efficiency is incredible. Another colleague chimed in. I thought yesterday's document would need 3 or 4 revisions. But she nailed it on the first try. These words, when they reached my ears, were not superficial compliments, but a genuine recognition. Even after a weekly meeting, unusually patted my shoulder. Well done, you remind me of a saying like a phoenix rising from the ashes. She's more fierce than fire. I paused slightly, then smiled. Yes, I was in the process of rebirth. As I walked out of the conference room, sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling window onto the hallway, radiating warmth. I suddenly realized that I hadn't shed a single tear these past few days. I once thought marriage was the entirety of my self-worth. Losing it would mean losing everything. But now, I clearly saw another path. When women no longer define their self-worth by love, their strength becomes unimaginable. In this moment, I even felt a strange sense of gratitude that the betrayal had been so stark and brutal because it woke me up completely, forcing me to confront my true self. No longer Michael's wife, no longer a pathetic woman betrayed, but a woman who, even in storms, could stand tall and carve out her own world with talent and courage. On a weekend afternoon, the sunlight slanted in through the floor-to-ceiling window, warming the walk-in closet. I opened the cabinet, preparing for a thorough clean-out. Clothes were folded one by one, shoes polished one by one, my movements calm and focused. It felt as if only through such monotonous repetition could I truly hear the voice within me. When I pushed open the innermost dusty box, I froze. Inside lay a stack of yellowed letter paper. The edges of the paper were already curled, but the ink was still clear. They were love letters Michael had written to me 10 years ago. My fingers trembled slightly as I carefully pulled out the top one. Grace, I want to be your safe harbor. A short sentence, the handwriting youthful yet resolute. It was as if I could still see the boy from back then, holding a pen under a dim light. In an instant, the floodgates of memory burst open. 10 summers ago, we crammed onto the subway together for class, and he always stood in front of me. During final exams, he delivered printed study materials to my dorm entrance in pouring rain. On graduation day, he held my hand tightly, his eyes full of promises for the future. The me of that time truly believed he was the one I would spend my life with. But things change. The safe harbor he once promised ultimately became the sharpest reef, leaving me battered and bruised. Tears welled up, yet I suddenly smiled. Yes, I had loved him so genuinely, giving him my youth without reservation. Even if the outcome was betrayal, that love shouldn't be denied. I gently folded the letter paper, stroke by stroke, patiently shaping it into a small paper boat. My movements were delicate, as if performing a gentle farewell ceremony for my past self. In the evening, I carried the paper boat to the riverside outside the neighborhood. A gentle breeze brushed my face, and the water rippled. I squatted down and placed the paper boat on the water. It swayed slightly at first, then was lifted by the current, slowly drifting into the distance. I watched it recede, a long-lost sense of peace washing over me. In this moment, I no longer resented Michael. His deception was his choice. My willingness to love wholeheartedly was also my choice. Having loved was enough. There was no need to dwell on it. I finally understood that letting go wasn't erasing memories, but learning to coexist peacefully with them. That paper boat was like the Grace of 10 years ago. Carried away, the girl who threw herself into love, pinning all her hopes on a man, was gone. And today, I had to learn to build my own sky. The sky was ablaze with sunset glow. I took a deep breath and whispered, "Thank you for loving me so much once. And thank you for teaching me through betrayal that a true safe harbor can only be built by myself." The water shimmered. As if responding, I turned and walked away, my steps light, a new strength suddenly stirring within me. I had finally made peace with myself. That night, the living room of William and Eleanor's home was brightly lit. Both sets of parents sat formally on either side of the couch, the atmosphere so heavy that even the air seemed to solidify. Hot tea sat steaming on the coffee table, but no one had the mind to touch it. Michael kept his head down, his phone screen constantly flickering. As usual, he tried to control the situation with silence, but I knew clearly that this time, his silence could no longer protect him. I took a deep breath, pulled out the USB drive I carried, and plugged it into the projector in the living room. Security footage from the hotel hallway quickly appeared on the white screen. Michael opened the room door, Skylar linked her arm through his, and she stood on tiptoes to kiss him on the corner of his mouth. That smile was ambiguous and familiar then. He gently brushed the top of her head, a gesture so tender it made my heart clench. That was precisely the habit H often had when he was courting me. The footage played frame by frame, and the living room was eerily silent. This can't be real, can it? Eleanor trembled, covering her mouth, tears streaming down her wrinkled cheeks. She couldn't accept that her son, always known as a model husband, had committed such a despicable act in his marriage. William, however, reacted differently. He slammed his hand on the table. Hot tea splashed from a coffee cup, scalding drops landing on the back of his hand, yet he seemed oblivious. "You ungrateful son. You've completely disgraced the family." Michael suddenly looked up, his face ashen, his lips moving. But he couldn't form a complete sentence. For the first time, he was completely exposed before his family, with no excuses to defend himself. And I, at that moment, was calmer than ever. I slowly rose, my voice steady and clear. "I'm not here today to cry or to seek sympathy. I just want to reclaim what is mine." I deliberately paused, allowing everyone's gaze to fall on me. "In this marriage, he broke faith first. I have the evidence, I have the facts. When it comes to asset division, I will not back down an inch. My worth is not defined by him, nor is it fulfilled by tolerating betrayal." When I finished speaking, the entire living room erupted. Eleanor cried out, "Grace, I'm so sorry. Our family has wronged you." William, with red eyes, pointed directly at Michael's nose. "Get on your knees and apologize. Don't think just because you're doing well outside, you can pull such despicable stunts." Michael's face flushed crimson, and he squeezed out a few words. "Dad, Mom, this is just a misunderstanding." But the next second, the intimate sounds coming from the screen were like a resounding slap. Tearing away his last shred of pretense, I sneered and turned off the projector. "A misunderstanding? Are you implying the hotel surveillance was fabricated? Or are you going to claim that woman was just a friend?" Eleanor shook her head painfully. "Enough, don't say any more," and, in a deep voice uttered, "From today on, don't expect the family to cover for you." This was the first time I genuinely saw Michael lose control in front of me. He hung his head, his hands tightly clenched, knuckles white, as if he had been brutally pulled down from a high position. I turned to both sets of parents, my tone still calm. "I will pursue legal action to secure the assets and rights I am entitled to. I don't need charity, nor do I want sympathy. I simply want to reclaim what is mine." With that, I pushed the wedding ring box to the center of the table. "This marriage ends now." The air was thick with a suppressed and complex atmosphere. Eleanor was weeping uncontrollably. William glared angrily at his son, his face pale. "The key lies in a complete and irrefutable chain of evidence." I nodded, placing all the materials I had collected during this time one by one on the table. First, chat logs. These were preliminary evidence of marital infidelity. Next, transfer records. The flow of money was the most direct evidence. Then, hotel stay records. The legal assistant pulled up the hotel's front desk system, cross-referencing it with the security footage. Michael had registered multiple times, with his companion listed as Skylar. These cold facts of time and place made everything undeniable. Finally, Skylar's social media, intimate photos of the two, travel pictures, and captions like, "Those who know me know." These public records alone could prove the existence of their relationship. The evidence was laid out on the table, piece by piece, like a tightening net, firmly enveloping Michael's deceit. A bitter taste briefly rose in my heart. Once, his excuses of working overtime or business trips all found their true counterparts in these cold, hard facts. Yet, at the same time, an unprecedented sense of security emerged. I was no longer the woman who had no proof and could only cry out. My anger was no longer a tearful accusation, but irrefutable evidence that could stand up to legal scrutiny. On the day of the court hearing, I wore a black suit, my expression calm. After reviewing the materials, the judge struck the gavel. "Evidence is valid, just for words," yet they struck like a heavy hammer, piercing the softest part of my heart. In that moment, I almost wanted to cry, not from grievance, but from a long-lost sense of security. I finally understood true satisfaction wasn't making the other party kneel and admit fault, but being able to proudly declare, when the system stood on my side, "My rights are protected by law." After the hearing, my attorney patted my shoulder. "Ms. Grace, you've already won half the battle. Next, we'll help you get back what's rightfully yours." I looked at the copy of the judgment on the table, feeling a completely different kind of weight in my heart for the first time. This was my own armor, not revenge, not tearing things apart, but clear, legal, unshakable protection. I whispered to myself, "Grace, from today on, You are no longer anyone's accessory, you are a person who can stand up for herself. I sat in front of my computer and clicked on the live stream. Countless viewers quickly poured onto the screen. The title read, Live, Marital Liquidation. In this moment, I was no longer the wife kept in the dark, but the one taking control to expose the truth. The attorney calmly read out the judgment. The marital home is awarded to Ms. Liu. Savings are to be divided equally. And Michael must pay 300,000 yuan in emotional distress damages. The live chat comments instantly exploded. You go, girl. Now this is real news. Cheating men deserve consequences. When the camera turned to me, I furred a slight smile, my voice clear and firm. These are my rights, not charity, and certainly not pity. From today onward, my life's ledger will only bear my own name. Michael's face was ashen, yet he had no words to retort. His signature on the property settlement, like undeniable evidence, ground his former arrogance into dust. The moment I closed the folder, a long-lost sense of lightness suddenly welled up within me. It wasn't just about the money. It was a complete liberation. I watched the "She's free" and "Live your truth" comments continuously flooding the live chat, and silently responded in my heart. Yes, in this moment, I finally belonged to myself. A few days later, during the interdepartmental promotion defense meeting, the spotlight shone on the podium, illuminating my figure. Tall and confident, I took a deep breath, lifted my gaze from my folder, and looked out at the faces below, some familiar, some new. I used to tread carefully in the workplace, always anxious about saying the wrong thing, missing a subtle glance, or being underestimated by colleagues. Back then, my self-worth was almost entirely tied to Michael's love, his approval, his demeanor. His praise were my sole source of security. But now, my value no longer depended on others' opinions. It was defined by me. I gently tidied my materials, turned on the projector, and the first slide displayed the dimensions of female reason, emotion, action. I began, my voice steady and strong. Today, I want to share not only my professional achievements, but also my understanding of female leadership. Women's leadership is not just reflected in management and decision-making abilities, but also in emotional regulation and independent self-worth. The slides changed, and I presented specific case studies: complex coordination of multinational projects, resolution of team conflicts, and management of market risks. Every detail was supported by data and results, clear and irrefutable. In the workplace, women are often expected to play delicate or supportive roles, but in reality, when women learn to transform emotion into action, define their value through action, and build power with evidence, their leadership can be truly exceptional. I paused, looking at the judges below. I hope this is not just theory, but also the outcome of my own practical experience. A moment of silence hung over the audience, followed by the faint rustle of notes. I continued, recounting my experiences over the past few months, the calm judgment I honed during a family crisis, the systematic thinking I gained from legal advocacy, and the executive ability I accumulated from interdepartmental projects. These were not simple victories, but rather a series of self-validations, a transformation from passive to proactive. As the defense concluded, I looked directly into the eyes of each judge and softly summarized. The old me would have doubted myself, even devalued myself, because of a failed marriage. Today, I stand here, proving with my achievements and my actions that women can absolutely control their own lives and careers. Leadership, in essence, begins with self-mastery. After a moment of pause, the room was so quiet one could almost hear a heartbeat. Then, applause erupted, first from my direct superior, then from the judges' panel, finally spreading throughout the entire hall. The applause was mixed with approval, surprise, and admiration. When the results were announced, a judge stated, word for word, unanimously approved. I smiled slightly, walking steadily down from the podium. My mind replayed the nights spent working late, meticulously organizing project materials, the long nights I endured to protect myself and my rights, and the self I once lost in love. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. The girl who was trapped by love, struck down by betrayal, was no longer afraid, no longer dependent. Now, she stood in the light, a woman capable of dominating her life and leading her career. An unprecedented sense of reassurance and joy surged within me. This was more than just a promotion. It was a profound self-affirmation. Colleagues around me smiled, subtly giving a thumbs up, and I knew this approval wasn't just from them, but also. That's all for today's story. Thank you for listening. This is my channel. The tales I share, drawn from life or woven from imagination, are meant to offer you connection, reflection, and perhaps solace or newfound strength. If you long to see your own reflection in others' journeys, or seek a glimmer of light within the maze of emotions, subscribe to my channel. Listen with your heart. Explore the stories of life.